Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 113 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by my friend, James Davis. James Davis is on the podcast. James was on the podcast back on episode 50, discussing challenges to checkpoints. If you have a checkpoint case coming up or are just interested in the attack points that exist to a checkpoint in North Carolina, please go listen to that episode. James masterfully went through the various challenges that you can bring on a checkpoint case. Very thorough, very thoughtful in going through that. James's father, who is also a brilliant trial lawyer, sharing the same name, James Davis, was on episodes 90 and 91 in our Masters of DWI series. So go take a listen to James's dad, who walked us through just some really helpful practice tips on those episodes 90 and 91. But today, James is back visiting us in a very different capacity than he was back on episode 50. Today, he is talking to us in his role, his new role as a financial planner. James recently changed careers from being a DWI criminal defense trial lawyer to a financial planner, financial management. And so he's just launched this new career. Go find him at www.daviswealthmanagementllc.com. You can email him at james@daviswealthmanagementllc.com. So you can contact him through email or go visit his website. But James, most people, I think, make a career change because either A, they're tired of what they do, B, they're not good at what they do, or C, they're not making enough money at what they do. None of that is true for James. I think James is a brilliant DWI and criminal defense trial lawyer. I think he loves advocating for clients in the courtroom. I think he really loved practicing law, and he was killing it doing that. With his family firm, was making had a very lucrative practice going, and was doing just fine financially on the law front. But his true passion is finance. His true passion comes from helping others achieve financial freedom. That's just a deeper passion. So somebody that is able to run a successful practice, is brilliant at what he does, and cares about clients, is now in the financial planning world, because that is his primary passion at this point. And so really cool to see that career change for James. Very excited for him. And I think we have a real advocate now in James, because I think one reason that he started this financial planning business was because he saw too many trial lawyers who were killing it in the courtroom for clients, who were committed to what they do, passionate at what they do, good at what they do, but not seeing the financial success in their practices, in their long-term wealth planning strategies, because they just did not have the time. Most of us don't have the time to devote to figuring out those long-term wealth management plans, to figuring out which strategies might be helpful and how we can kind of use our business properly on a financial front, and devote the resources into our retirement and wealth planning strategies. So this is a very powerful episode, because first of all, you're going to hear James talk about his transition from the law to financial planning and what drove him to that. And it's just a really cool and inspiring story. Again, we have an advocate as a financial planner, somebody that has lived and breathed what we do every day in the courtroom. He's been there. He's done it. He's been the person that is traveling from one county to the next and doing all the things, having all of the issues pop up at the office. He's lived and breathed that, so he understands where we're coming from, but has now used that as his passion to go into financial planning so that he can help, I would say, especially lawyers, achieve the financial freedom that they are looking for. And then James is also going to talk to us about some very specific and helpful strategies for achieving financial freedom. So really, if you have any need for a financial planner, if you don't have a financial planner, give James a call. He'll talk to you about his strategies for you and what he might be able to do, what his firm might be able to do for you. But reach out, and I hope that you enjoy today's episode. Excited very much to have you back on the podcast. And I guess we got a lot of updating to do since you were on last. So tell us a little bit about the transition into financial planning, what kind of provoked that, and what that has looked like since deciding that that's where you wanted to spend your time.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the practice of law, and I still enjoy the practice of law. It's led me to meet a number of just incredible people like yourself, and it's intellectual gymnastics every day, which is enjoyable, especially when you're a criminal defense attorney. Usually you're the kind that goes into the courthouse every single day. You never know what your day is going to be like. Some days are very boring, but that's usually not most days. Usually there's always something exciting that's going on. So I really like the practice of law. I like the fact that, especially most of the criminal lawyers, you get to run your own business. I really love that fact. I love the fact that daily life is not boring. But ultimately, it was not my passion. I'm getting close to being 40 years old, have one 6-year-old and another child on the way. And really, I got into what does my future look like?
Yeah.
And I used to laugh. If anybody knows my dad that listens to this, he's a board certified specialist in 3 areas of law, which I think only 2 or 3 attorneys can say. He spends his nights and weekends reading case law. Constantly, I'll get the 10:30 p.m. on Friday text message, "Hey, what do you think about this case?"
That's awesome.
And as his son, I used to always make fun of that. But I realized over the last 4 and 5 years, I would spend my nights and weekends reading financial reports. I would spend my nights and weekends considering stock market trends. I would spend my nights and weekends learning how to build and grow passive income so I could have options down the road. So eventually I found that I was in a position where I was racing to become financially independent, to retire from the practice of law. And then my question was, well, what do I do? Well, I learned during COVID that golfing 3, 4, 5 days a week is not the path that I want. Don't get me wrong. I love going out and playing golf with the guys, but I didn't want to do that 3, 4, 5 days a week. And so really what I looked into is what's my passion? What's something that I can do that doesn't feel like work? And what's something that I can do to help people? And that's how I got into this new profession.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool journey in terms of just kind of like self-discovery of where the passion lies. And I really think it's so helpful for us, to be having this conversation, but also to have, one of our own, so to speak, in the financial world, because I feel like criminal defense lawyers, I think this is true of a lot of people in the legal profession, certainly true of myself. Law school doesn't teach you how to run a business. It doesn't teach you how to really even practice in the courtroom in a lot of ways. So that's all you're figuring that out. You're figuring out if you're a sole practitioner, how to get your business off the ground. Certainly doesn't teach you anything about the financial world. And for me, I think that anytime stocks or kind of 401k conversations would pop up, it's just like, the eyes would somewhat glaze over. Not because I wasn't interested. It's just like, I don't even understand this stuff. Like the financial literacy that is required to kind of get your head around that stuff just feels so intimidating in a lot of ways. And so I think we miss out as a profession in having some of those options at our disposal and really understanding. And the only way to really kind of get yourself in the game on that front is to learn about it. And so the fact that you were kind of doing, some of that through self-study is pretty cool. I mean, finding your passion and what is interesting. So, it's a great, I think, privilege for us to have somebody that was your caliber of criminal defense attorney. You'll always be a criminal defense lawyer in my mind. So I'll say still your caliber of criminal defense lawyer in the financial world, because I just think that there's so much knowledge that can come for the criminal defense bar through having a better understanding of what financial options are out there. So yeah, maybe just talk a little bit about, kind of anything that you've seen in the legal profession that kind of led into that decision to go into financial planning as well.
Sure. Well, I've got a personal story. One of the main reasons that, I've been a lawyer for 13 years now. And one of the main reasons that I decided to change professions is I've been personally impacted by the fact that we have to create our own retirement. Most of us, right? Yep. We don't work for the government. We're in private practice. We have to create our own retirement if we're ever going to have one. And it's somewhat difficult and time consuming to do if you don't have all of the tools, if you don't have all of the relationships, if you don't have all of the resources. If you go back generations in my family, we're very simple people. I mean, we grew up mill workers, hard workers, in the Kannapolis, Concord area. But we lived in mill houses. I remember visiting my great grandparents. I mean, I think their house had 2 rooms, basically a living room and a bedroom and maybe a side room as well. But my family has progressed primarily through the practice of law over time. My grandfather was a state senator. He was a judge. He was a private practitioner for, I believe 40 to 50 years. I know he was an attorney for 55 years, but he was a really successful guy, had a great house, incredible marriage, big family. I still to this day hear stories about just what an incredible man he was. And he was, I mean, I love having a memory of him every day because he was such an incredible man. But I was in college and he got cancer. And over 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, I could see his body deteriorating. And I always wondered why he, never stopped working, never stopped, to rest, to feel okay. Because I saw the days he did not feel okay. And, so only when I got older that I realized, and he may or may not have, I don't want to speak for him, but, unless you've got a few $1 million in your retirement account, you don't really have the ability to truly stop working. And I know that, they didn't have those things. The lawyers that grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they didn't have retirement accounts. They just earned their income and, saved money in savings account as it came around. My father's also an attorney, and he has done a really good job of networking and kind of building out the firm. And sort of what I mean by that is lawyers the lawyers that I know, they could clearly do their finances if they had the time.
Right.
These are smart people, incredible aptitude. They could absolutely do it if they had the time. The problem is, as a criminal defense attorney, you go to court every day. You're in court anywhere from 2 hours to 8 hours every day. Then you get out, you got to manage employees. You have to pay attention to payroll on a weekly or biweekly basis. You have to meet with clients. You have to prep for cases the next day. You have to argue cases the next day. You're really busy. And I learned over the course of having my own small business that there's a ton of relationships you need to really optimize your business. Let me give you just a quick example of the standard solo practitioner, right? A lot of solo practitioners get into it. They don't know what they're going to do. And, their personal checking account is their operating account.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm not a CPA. Yeah, I'm not a CPA. Consult your CPA. But you get so much tax savings and protection. Let me take just a step back. You need to incorporate your business.
Yeah.
Whether it's an S corp, whether it's a limited liability company, whatever's best for you, you need to incorporate your business. Your business needs to have its own tax identification, and you need to have your own bank account for your business, and your income and expenses for your business need to flow through that account. It creates a situation where at tax time, if your business account is your personal account, there's so many business expenditures that you would not write off or recognize. So it's very important to have your own separate entity, to have your own separate account, to have your own separate income that goes into that, and your own separate expenses that go into that, because there's a ton of cost as it relates to your business that you can clearly identify as a business expense, and you can deduct it. There's huge tax savings there.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I didn't get on here to talk taxes. I'm not a CPA.
I think that's a great
first
point.
Step.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I feel like that's a more immediate step for a lot of people, because that should really be happening. If it hasn't already happened at your firm, it should happen tomorrow. I mean, this should be something that happens immediately. I took a tax law class in law school, and a lot of it, again, felt like it was beyond me. There was like, all these little rules, and you're reading the code, the IRS code, and all these different little kind of nitpicky things. But I learned two things from that class. One is that I did not want to be a tax lawyer, that I would shoot myself before becoming a tax lawyer. And number two was I needed a really good accountant. That was like the other part of it. So, not only should you incorporate, but like you said, I mean, sitting down with your accountant, I think, if you've got a personal friend or somebody that you've had do your taxes for a long time, just sitting down with them and setting up an hour-long session to say, how can I do a better job in this upcoming tax year to keep more of my income? What can I do differently? You're going to get a number of good ideas if that CPA is worth their salt. We have a great accountant that I've worked with for a long time, and that kind of like, proactive planning has been crucial, and just there's no real rocket science to it or anything that is overly difficult to manage. It's just knowing how you're supposed to be kind of reporting, spending money, where you could adjust costs. All these kind of things can save so much money, over one tax year, nonetheless over a period of years. So if you don't have somebody that is doing your tax, don't be doing your taxes at H&R Block. Don't be going to some, small place and getting that knocked out. It is really worth having a good accountant.
Sure. And, for criminal defense lawyers, listeners of your podcast, if you're going to court, if you don't know a good accountant, just ask a good lawyer.
Right.
2 or 3 that are local, that are in that area. Somebody there is going to run a well-run business that's going to have the contacts. Just ask them. Also, just a very easy example, like we talked about earlier. If you are a very small firm, and I think small firms are super, super profitable. I mean, they are the ideal business for me. But if you're a small firm, I'll give you an example. You might go out, I need a computer, and I go buy a Microsoft, Surface Pro or something like that. You're going to forget to deduct that if you don't have your own business entity, your own business account, your own business credit card, all of those things. You're going to have working lunches you're going to forget to deduct. You're going to forget to deduct your computers. You may not deduct all 12 months of your rent. It's just really easy to identify when you have all of that within the business financial structure. And so, you certainly need to do that. And then just back to my point, you don't have to know it all. There is somebody in that courtroom that you're familiar with who would be happy to take 5 minutes, in the back and tell you, hey, I've got a really good accountant, let's start here. The other thing is, and I'd love to get your take on this before I expound on it further. I would say, so there's firms that are not incorporated. They do not have their own business accounts. Their personal and business expenses are muddled together. And then there are firms that are past that step, and they are incorporated. They do have their own, checking account, credit card, all of those things. They do have a good CPA, but then that's all they have. So you get to the point where you're good as it relates to tax advice, and you're good as you relate to your expense structure. But where you're missing the mark is you don't have the other portion in your corner, which is the financial advisor. What you want to do is you want to put yourself in a room with the CPA and the financial advisor, and you need to say, look, this is the money that we're generating. This is the amount that's over and above expenses. How do we take this and make, if you're a small firm and it's just you, me, or me and my partners, how do we take this and make us wealthier individually instead of just spending the money?
Right.
Yeah.
So and not only wealthier, but it's again, we're not even talking about bringing in more cases, right? Like, it's just, based on what we have, how can we actually generate more wealth just from that? That's what I think is so beautiful. I think you shared, I don't remember if it was in our conversation or if you'd sent this over by email earlier, that your dad has made it a habit to always have a CPA and financial planner in the room at the same time when there's those kind of decisions getting made. And that, I think, really is even more powerful, like monumentally more powerful than just having a financial planner and a CPA, because a lot of times if they're not communicating, you're just going to miss opportunities there by not having everybody on the same page. So I really liked that particular practice.
Sure. And just to sort of crystallize that for your listeners, I had a lawyer last year approach me. The guy's a great lawyer. It was December, and he said, help. I made $50,000 more than I did last year, and I don't want to get taxed on it. What do I do? Well, if he only talked to his accountant, which he does have an accountant, a very good one, she would tell him, you need to buy things. You need to spend the money. So they would go out and buy unnecessary computers. Now, if you need a computer, great. Make it a business expense, right? Write it off. But if you don't need computers, if you don't need to update your business realty, if you don't need to buy, spend on, let's say you've taken it a step further and you have that company car, your company pays for your car, right?
Right.
But you don't need to spend $60,000, $70,000 on a car every year just because, right? Let's make yourself wealthier. So anyway, he came to me with this problem, and I said, well, we had just met, and I said, well, do you have a 401k? Yes, I do. Well, can I examine the plan? And as we looked at the plan, I realized that, so let me just talk 401ks generally,
Yeah, that'd
just
be
real
great.
fast.
Yeah, please.
So with 401ks, and the reason why 401ks, I am really pushing 401ks in terms of small law firms. And I am here. First of all, it's a lot of work. With the small business, with the small law firm, we don't have HR departments. We don't have the capacity as it relates to time to sit down and actually figure all of that out and set it up and all of those things. I would say from start to finish, a 401k takes about 2 months to create. And that is just mind blowing.
It is. Yeah.
Because, you can go on Vanguard's website tomorrow, and if you want to create your own investment account that's not retirement related, just a brokerage account, you can do so in about 30 minutes. The problem with 401ks, it's the good thing and the bad thing, is they are regulated heavily by the federal government under ERISA. And so there are a ton of filings that have to take place to make sure that you're being non-discriminatory towards all of your employees, and that you have safe investment options for your employees. They're really concerned as it relates to retirement accounts. They want the money to be there in retirement, right?
Right.
So what's the easiest way to really hurt yourself as it relates to your retirement nest egg? Well, you don't diversify, right? You put 100% of your investment in Tesla. And I don't know if you've checked recently, but Tesla's down about 45%. Great time to buy, by the way. But you put 100% of your, into one single stock. You're not diversified. You're really hurting yourself. There's a strong likelihood that you may not do well in the long term, versus if the options within the plan are very diversified. Look, the research shows with the S&P 500, for example, over the last 100 years, now it's going to have years where it earns 27%. It's going to have years where it's down 12%. But on average, over the long term, you're going to get about 11.8% annually. That as long as you stay broadly diversified, right? So anyway, there's all of these guidelines, protections that the federal government requires with 401ks, and they measure compliance with those. And so there's a ton of paperwork on the front end. There's a ton of plan monitoring on a yearly basis, annual filings and things like that. But if you do all that, which you will, if you involve a financial professional and you involve an appropriate vendor, if you do all of those things, then that's where they sort of open up the floodgates in terms of letting you help yourself. I'll give you an example. If you go on Vanguard's website and open up an IRA for yourself, in 2022, if you're less than 50 years old, you can only contribute up to $6,000 into that account annually. If you're over 50, you can contribute up to $7,000 in that account annually. That sounds like a lot. It's not in terms of where you want to be for retirement. If you have a 401k, you as an individual, you can contribute up to $20,500 annually of your own salary. And then through a combination of your individual contributions as well as your employer contributions, you can contribute up to $61,000 if you're under 50 years old, and up to $67,500 if you're over 50 years old. There's a gross difference in how much you can help yourself. Now, let me take that back to the problem that a friend of mine had last December. He had $50,000 that he did not want his business to be taxed on. He didn't want to be taxed on it. Well, again, he could have bought a few computers and a car, and he would have had something shiny for a few months. We decided to because he did have a 401k plan, and his 401k plan allowed for profit sharing from his business, he took that $50,000 and made himself wealthier. He put it into his 401k pre-tax. So on the front end, it's not taxed. It's not like, hey, I've earned $50,000. The government taxes me. I'm now at $35,000 and I can invest it. He took the whole amount, same as cash, all $50,000, and contributed into his 401k through his employee contributions. He was allowed to deduct on his taxes $20,500. And then through the profit sharing of his employer contribution, which put in the remaining $29,500. All of that, whether it was to him or his business, was completely deductible. And he was $50,000 wealthier personally. And all of that money was invested and is working for him. So imagine if you did that for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years, for 20 years. You're definitely going to open up some options as it relates to if being a lawyer is your vocation, great, stick with it. That's beautiful, but you at least have options. And alternatively, if you want to slow down, if life comes at you fast, you want to slow down, you want to do like me and follow your passion, you want to have a career change, you want to do something else, it gives you the options to do that. So that's just, I know that people, that your listeners, that small business owners, we get to the end of the year and we're worried about taxes. We're all worried about taxes.
Yeah, for sure.
When you involve the financial professional, if you can have the options to legally avoid those taxes or defer those taxes, because you do get taxed once you start receiving the money, right? It's ordinary income tax. But you can defer those taxes until a later date, have the money working for you, and become personally wealthier. So that's to me, that's why you add the two people in the room, not just the accountant. You have the accountant, you have your financial professional, and the two of you decide, the three of you decide what's the best way to allocate this money.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think that the planning portion is so important. Just a couple of thoughts on what you just went over, James. But I think that planning element is so important because, again, if you're like me, the first, kind of like 5 or 6 years that I was in business, every time I went in, and I only went in once a year, every time I went in to meet with my accountant, it was like sweating. It was like, what's the number that he's going to spit out? Like zero clue, like there'd be years when it was like, oh my gosh, that's a giant and there'd be other years where I got a return and I was like, who knew I was going to get money back? It's just like, felt like I just won the lottery. So I slightly missed the days of feeling like I missed a lot, won the lottery, but for the most part, it was just a real disconnect in terms of what number is his computer going to spit out of the machine. And I think that financial planning element is so important because if you're living like I did, that really it excludes a lot of opportunities in terms of 401k or investment opportunities that you can look at. The other part of what you said that I think is so important is the setting up of a 401k does feel kind of like monumentally overwhelming. And we had about a year and a half ago as a firm, we have our kind of like 1-page strategic plan where we have short and long-term goals. And the 3 to 5 year goals was set up a 401k program for the firm. And, the reason it was 3 to 5 years out is it's like, that feels like a big goal. Let's kind of figure this out down the road. And we decided kind of about 6 months into developing that plan, hey, I think a 401k would really help, not only in terms of financially planning for ourselves, but also really give our employees what we want to give in terms of them being able to wealth build and kind of provide the type of, retirement plan that they want to be able to provide. Not only do you want to do that from a personal standpoint, but it's also a massive selling point in the world of hiring. I mean, you can just attract different people, a higher class of people, if you have some of those benefits than if you don't. And so we kind of escalated that. And then, 3 months later, we rolled out the 401k plan to employees, and we've got a lot of buy-in from across the firm. People are very excited about that, have been contributing, I think, a lot of monies into those accounts. And again, it felt like this massive hurdle to overcome. But as we kind of dove into it, yes, it's a lot of paperwork back and forth initially. But if you have a group that does that, or a financial planner that is helping you through that process of setting that plan up, you can kind of offload a lot of that kind of paperwork stress that would come with it. So even though it feels overwhelming, I think it's easier than it sounds.
Sure. And I'm just curious from your perspective, for your listeners, really, once you got through with your financial professional, once you got through it and it was actually set up and it was actually set in motion, it was probably more to you of kind of a set it and forget it at that point. Like it's up, you don't really have to worry about it so much. And
I don't think about it. Our accountant handles it from a bookkeeping standpoint. And then the people that are handling the 401k plan prepare most of the compliance documents and all that we just have to review and sign off on. I mean, it's very much kind of running itself at this point. So yeah, there was a good amount of paperwork on the front end, but at this point there's zero headache at this point, kind of reviewing everything. So, but again, tremendous buy-in from the team, and just exciting to be able to help out, again, not only ourselves in terms of wealth building, and not being so afraid of setting this up that we weren't going to take advantage of that for another 3 years, but really kind of knowing that there's a lot of employee buy-in, and we're helping wealth build for our team in the future.
Sure. And as you know, when you look at the lawyers that have been successful for 25 years, for 30 years, I would venture to say that 98% of them have had a very successful paralegal or two.
Yes, for sure. No doubt. The people that are actually running the office.
Yeah, that's right. And those people, you work with someone that closely for 28, 30, 35 years, those people are family.
Yes,
they're not blood, for sure. But they are absolutely family. And that's the other thing. You want to know that you've benefited their life in some way. And the firm can do that even if that employee doesn't take advantage. So there's sort of 3 tiers with the 401k, right? The first tier is, from the employee's perspective, how much do I want to take advantage of this, right? They can contribute $0 to it, or they can contribute up to $20,500. The other tier is and again, this is all this ERISA compliance. There's a matching perspective. So let's say that your employee, a match that I see a lot of people do is they'll match the first 3% of someone's annual compensation dollar for dollar, and then 0.5% at 4% and 5%. So basically a 4% match. I've seen some companies do up to a 10% match of your annual compensation dollar for dollar. Or I've even seen some companies do, and this is from the business perspective, whether the employee contributes or not, they contribute 3% of their salary into that person's 401k. I've seen a number of, I try and recruit the paralegals to contribute because I know that a little bit can go a long way over time. It can,
for sure.
But even in the event that an employee chooses not to contribute any of their salary, the plan can be structured to, for example, where the business provides, and it's deductible to the business, 3% of that employee's annual compensation to that employee's plan. So there's how much the employee or the business owner, how much they can contribute. There's the matching aspect from the business itself based on how much the employee does. But then there's also a profit sharing component. And that's what I just shared with the example of the $50,000 a while ago, is the business was profitable. We need to do something with this. What do we do? Well, you can spread it out among your employees. And that's another way that the business can contribute to, for example, that treasured paralegal or two or three or whoever it is, to really help, supercharge their retirement. The other thing, we talked about all this ERISA compliance. What I don't want one of your listeners to hear is to think, oh, I've got, it's just me as the attorney, but I've got three paralegals, and I often have that $50,000 problem. So what I'll do is I'll just put $50,000 into my own retirement every year and not touch theirs. There's testing that has to be done. It's ERISA testing has to be done. It's still allows you to very fairly, if you're a business owner and you feel like, look, I had some hard cases, and a lot of this money caused me a ton of sleepless nights, you can still contribute, if you choose, most of it into your own account. But there's certain testing that has to be done to make sure that you do not unfairly discriminate between higher level employees and lower level employees. So again, ERISA gives and it takes. It requires your team, not you as the attorney, but your team, to do a lot of work to make sure you're in compliance. But it otherwise gives you a ton of flexibility in terms of what you do with your business profits.
Yeah, I think I really like that image of your team as family, and paralegals that have been crushing it for you for years. The bond that you feel with those people who are keeping disgruntled clients at bay, or getting that motion prepared at the last second based on your own poor planning, like that, are just saving your butt time and again. It really does create a very special connection. And one thing I think is pretty cool about, putting a 401k plan into place, especially if you're doing it, at a firm beyond just yourself, is you can kind of invite some financial planning into the lives of your team, and so to have somebody like you come in and explain to the team as you're kind of getting that plan off the ground, here's what this looks like. Don't waste the opportunity to just say, okay, we've now got a 401k program without explaining what that is. To have somebody come in and do some models of, hey, this is what it looks like if you put $3,000 a year into this 401k program for the next 10 years, or here's what it looks like if you put $10,000 into the 401k program. I mean, but again, having somebody that comes in and explains that, again, to me, that kind of financial planning, those tools that are available in financial planning seems very foreign. And I would imagine that for a lot of our team, it seems at least that foreign, if not more foreign, in terms of kind of wrapping your head around that. So we've had some pretty cool experiences here at the office in terms of people that have, obviously taken advantage of the 401k program, but also because of like the financial planning aspect, have really started going after other financial challenges in their life. We had somebody this past month that paid off their debt at the firm and was super excited about that, had like made that a personal goal for the quarter and really tackled debt and basically paid off all of their debt. We've got a couple of other paralegals that are working through different financial plans in terms of tackling debt. How much am I investing? And so it's just cool to see that kind of energy, coming out of the team. So there's a real value in having, again, not only the plan itself, but having a professional like yourself come in and explain that to the team in terms of, hey, here's how to take advantage of this tool that we've implemented.
Yeah, no, it's great. And having our own business, it was wonderful to see not only our accounts grow, but also our paralegals' accounts grow. if they listen to this, they'll probably learn for the first time that we do monitor that as well. And we only do just to make sure that they're doing well, because we want to know that they're being taken care of.
Yeah.
The other thing that's, but it's not just all 401k based. I mean, I think my personal belief is having a 401k is just as important as having a CPA, because your CPA covers you in terms of your taxes and making sure you're in compliance with the federal government. Your 401k covers you later in life, you
Right.
personally,
Right.
because the people that are listening to your podcast, we're private practitioners. We are responsible for our own retirement. And, the earlier we start that, the easier it is. But it's not just all 401k based in terms of why you might need a financial planner. There's things that you can do if you think this is appropriate. There's things that you can do for your children as well that are just mind-blowing if you start when they're young. Do you mind if I give you an example?
No, yeah, please feel free to go down that route.
Let's say I'm a solo practitioner. Let's say I'm married, and let's say I have one child. I am doing a good job of saving for myself and investing for myself. But I do know that at the end of the day, I want to make sure that my child is taken care of, later in life as well. And I'm an attorney, and I have a good income, and I have the ability to do that. Well, how hard is it to earn $50,000, to earn $100,000, to earn $500,000, to earn $1 million? It's really hard. We all know that. It's a grind every week to make that $3,000, right? But the earlier you start, you can put your child in such a position of success, it will blow your mind. I talked with a buddy of mine yesterday evening, and he has a 6-month-old child. We are opening up a brokerage account for that 6-month-old child, and he's going to contribute $30 a month. $30 a month. If he continues to contribute $30 a month through age 60, that child's going to have $1 million. $30 a month, $1 million. It's the time that allows that to happen.
Yeah.
There's also, I'm sure most people have these 529 accounts. When your child turns 18, you don't want to get a $75,000 college bill and just, say, oh, well, I had to make $115,000, to pay this $75,000 tax bill. No, don't use your after-tax dollars to pay for it. Start investing your after-tax dollars in a 529 account. Let the assets grow. And then if you spend those assets on qualified educational expenses like college tuition, then you can take all of that growth and spend it on the tuition tax-free. The government allows you to treat the growth tax-free. So there's tons of strategies that you can use, for children or, just yourself that, they're there, they're legal. Let's educate you. Let's put them in motion. And then it's kind of like you said with the 401k. It takes a little bit to get that inertia. It takes a little bit to put it in motion. But once you put it in motion, it's kind of set it and forget it at that point.
Yeah. I think that education really is the most important thing when it comes to all this. And I mean, again, in terms of knowing all of the nuances of Roth IRA versus 401k, education account, health savings account, just having somebody that you can sit down with and say, where do you think, what would be the best place to invest right now? What kind of tool should we be using with the, kind of excess from this past year? Having somebody that you can just sit down with for a very short amount of time and kind of walk through all of those different options with you, go over some, very basic models with you about those is just incredibly powerful. And again, it's just something to me, this is a very much a learn from my learn from my ignorance moment. It's just, all of these tools are very, very new to me, kind of like embarrassingly new. And it's so powerful. So, if you're having, those kind of thoughts about, well, this is going to be overwhelming, or I don't know which tool is going to be the right thing. That's why you go talk to a financial planner about that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, you hit the nail on the head. And then just the other thing, we literally cannot get into all of the options, in one
For sure.
podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the other thing that people need is just a normal investment account, right? It's not retirement related, just a normal investment account. And the reason why we need that is, we've got colleagues, friends, family that have $50,000 sitting in their checking account. They're good savers, right? But what's that earn them? Nothing. When this is when that investing is working. That investing is working when you invest a certain amount, let's just say $30,000, for example. And now, granted, $30,000 is not going to turn into this description that I'm making, but let's say I'll use an example in my own life. I've invested in a 401k for about 9 years now, and I've invested pretty heavily in that 401k over that time period. Well, last year I was fortunate enough to contribute probably about 35,000 into my 401k. So I didn't get near the 61,000 that we could have done through a mixture of my investments and matching and profit sharing. It was about $35,000. Well, my account grew by $100,000. Okay. So my investments made $65,000.
That's crazy.
And I contributed 35 of that. Right. That's when this is really working, when your investments make more than you actually make and then you actually bring to the table. So you can also do those same things, not just with your 401ks, but with your just investment accounts. And the reason why I think that's so important is, you have the 34-year-old lawyer, you have the 40-year-old lawyer, the 45-year-old lawyer who is just grinding. They're doing a great job. They are, you see them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. They are becoming incredible at their craft. But, at some point, you might want to spend some time with the grandkids, or you might want to travel with your wife, or you might just want to, take a case here and there, but not do the grind every single day. Well, with the 401k, if that's the only thing you do, you may well put yourself in a situation where you're retirement rich, right? Let's say you contribute $30,000 every year to your 401k. You're going to be retirement rich. You will be. You will have done excellent. But you may be daily life poor, because if you're 50 years old, you can't touch that 401k without penalty until at least 59 and a half.
Right.
Otherwise, you're touching it and giving the government a free 10% penalty. So when you're investing the same way, but in a completely non-attached to retirement account, you have the flexibility. Let's say you're 50 years old. The account might have 500 grand in it or whatever it's got. Well, you've got some flexibility now. You know what? I want to take a trip. I want my investments to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it out of my earned income. I want to slow down a little bit this year. We'll pull from your investments a little bit. But I don't want to say one of the worst things that you can do, because there are not many people that are retirement rich. So if we get to a point where we're retirement rich, I'm extraordinarily pleased. But if you're smart enough to do that, you need to also include at least some investments in just a general non-retirement brokerage account, because that's what's going to bridge the gap between what you're doing today and when you eventually start to pull from that nest egg later on.
Totally. I think that is such a, again, just the thought process of where is wealth coming from, right? Like, your primary driver, as a solo practitioner, finances is basically that income that you're generating through your business, right? And we get into this mindset that that's really how I'm going to become wealthy. And I think you had kind of talked about the idea of being rich versus wealthy. Explain what you were meaning by that, because I think that a lot of us have this kind of we're stuck in that potentially like rich mentality.
Sure. I mean, I would consider a number of attorneys to be rich. And what I mean by that is at the end of the year, each year, they've earned a pretty sizable income. The difference in my mind between rich and wealthy is when you go on your beach vacation every year, how do you pay for that? I'm not asking you, I'm asking that just generally.
Yeah.
Is your earned income paying for that? You're rich. You're not wealthy. Wealthy people have their pay for luxuries with their passive income, right? Their investments, whether you're one who doesn't touch a 401k, you don't touch a stock market. Let's say you have 20 rental properties. Okay. Your 20 rental properties are funding your lifestyle. That's a wealthy person.
Right.
Right. Your alternatively, let's say, there's too much. And by the way, my personal opinion, I've had both. Too much work with rentals, in my opinion. Great way to diversify. You can also own something called Reits, for example, REIT. It's a REIT. It's a real estate investment trust. You basically own rental properties without doing all of the work, right? You buy it like a stock, but it's rental properties. There's professionals out there who are managing these properties, and then they're like S corporations. They have to pay the income out to the owners of the REIT. But if a lot of people I know do rental properties, when the rental properties are funding you passively, you're wealthy. Alternatively, if your investments are funding you, you're wealthy. If you're using your investments to pay for your beach vacation, for your golf clubs, those kinds of things, you're wealthy. I think a ton of lawyers are rich. We make a good income. And obviously that's relative, right? But we make a good income. But I think a lot of us are very, 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 very far from wealthy. And again, that's not an intellectual knock. That's not saying that someone doesn't have the aptitude. They would be shocked at how many hours in the day, and I'm sure most financial professionals aren't this way, but they would be shocked at how many hours in the day that I work as a financial professional. But I'm doing so because the lawyer can't.
Right? Exactly.
The lawyer's in the courtroom, the lawyer's dealing with the clients, the lawyer's, helping out his employees. You just don't have, it's a time thing.
It is a time thing. And I think it is an education thing as well. It's not to say that you can't have that knowledge, but it's just so far out to the periphery of what's important on your priority list that it's just not going to get addressed unless you kind of move it up the priority list. Right. And again, you don't have to become this financial guru in terms of understanding the ins and outs of all of these different tools that can be kind of wealth planning tools and strategies. It's just really about setting enough time aside, in my opinion, initially to just sit down and meet with a financial planner and figure out what options exist out there. So,
sure. I think there's a taboo there,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
there's no taboo at all. In fact, it's looked at necessary as having a CPA on your team, right? Get a financial professional on your team as well.
Right. Totally. I think, and it's crazy that it is taboo, because I think most of us would feel, really good about sitting down and looking at some, life insurance policies to make sure that, if we were to pass away, our loved one would be taken care of, whoever it is that's in our life would be taken care of. But really it's the same mentality that should apply to that retirement strategy is, how are we going to kind of be in a position of, comfort? How can I take care of my my significant other, or our family unit, my kids, as they grow up, the way that I want to, and that happens through financial planning. So again, the taboo element is strange, because it really at the end of the day comes down to, are we kind of interested in taking care of the people around us that we love?
Sure. Probably the last thing I'd like to talk about, if you're okay with that, is how to know where you need to go for retirement.
Yeah, I think in terms of kind of figuring out who is a good fit from my financial planner side of things, that's really important. I think a lot of people may be kind of interested, hopefully, by this episode and reaching out to a financial planner. So what should we be looking for? What questions should we be asking if we're going to sit down with a financial planner?
Sure. I mean, it's just like, in my mind, it's just like, unfortunately, we know this. It's just like, you don't want to just walk into a random lawyer's office.
No.
And, you just get what you get, right? You want to know, the person's education as it relates to, because the scary thing is, you don't have to have a college degree to be a financial professional. You only have to pass a test now. This test was created in 2018, but you only have to pass a test called the Securities Industry Essentials. That test was created because so many people were taking and failing the Series 7. So it's like the initial entry level financial planning course. Then you have to pass the Series 7, and you have to pass the Series either 63, 65, or 66. I took the 66. And then at that point, you just got to get licensed by the state, and you can do the work. The problem is, if you cram study for those full time and you are just reasonably intelligent, I would say with 2 months of study that you could pass those. But it's kind of just like the bar exam in terms of minimum competence. I would definitely want to know, what's their collegiate education like? What did they study? What's their practical experience for themselves? I would want to know how they've done, with their own personal investments.
Yeah, that's a great
where
point.
they're at. And I know that a lot of people probably would feel uncomfortable talking about that, but I would want to know that. One of the main reasons that I went into this and feel so confident myself is, I am the lawyer that has run the small law firm. I am the lawyer that knows where, in my opinion, this is an opinion, but I think I can give you a pretty good consultant view of, who you should talk to and where your money should go. In terms of whether it's, like you said, 401k, normal brokerage account, Roth IRA, HSA, those sorts of things. And you definitely need to include a CPA in the process, because I'm not a CPA. But I think those are some really good questions in terms of determining, like you would determine whether this lawyer is right for you. I think there are also some good questions in terms of whether the financial professional is right for you. The other thing that I'm learning as I'm walking through this career is, it's not so much financial professional. It is to an extent, but it's more salesman. Financial professionals, you have to watch them. I mean, because they're constantly in search of that next account.
Right.
So the other question that I would have for people when, let's say they already have a financial professional, and let's say they've had a financial professional for 10, 15, 20 years. Let's say they've had a 401k. When's the last time they've talked to their financial professional? Right? Are they involving them in those meetings? Or if they did try to involve them in those meetings, are they meaningfully participating? If someone walked into your office and they're your client, you would give them your complete time and attention. You're working on a matter of theirs. As a financial professional, if I have an account of yours, I'm working on that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And that's one of the things that I've seen, just in terms of, either there's no financial professional involved, or on the other hand, there was a financial professional involved a long time ago, but there's no daily monitoring of it. And that's not a knock on the individual. The individual is probably a great guy or gal, but they're stretched too thin. I've made it a point in my practice. I am not going to stretch myself too thin. If I do, I'll get a team like you have. You I'm sure make sure that the work that you take is within a bandwidth that you can do a really great job for. I want to do the same thing. It is my goal on a personal level. I can absolutely service 50 law firms. That is my goal. If I can improve the life of 50 law firms, then I will have done a great job. Now, I'm sure we'll eventually get more than that, and I will hire help, and we will have the bandwidth to do a really good job for people. But your financial professional should not be just their salesperson. They get you in the door and they're done. We need, just like you would expect help from your lawyer, you need ongoing help from your financial professional as well.
Yeah, I think that that's super cool, like personal goal in terms of wanting to help law firms, James. And I know you will hit that goal and do a bang up job. So it's cool to hear that. I was doing a podcast recently with my brother Jeremy, who had done a lot of our marketing in the past, and so we were kind of reflecting on some different things and what makes a good marketing company. And very similar kind of thought process on his end. He was like, if you get a marketer, marketing company that you hire, they basically send you a report once a month by email, and that's it. That's the entirety of the kind of contact. Basically his advice was run away as quick as you possibly can. Like, if you don't have somebody that's kind of hands-on discussing, what the strategy is, where you are, what's being actively worked on. He was like, they're not doing anything. They're basically sending you the report, clicking the button once a month, and that is the extent of the work happening. And I think that very much would apply in the financial planning realm as well. If you've got, basically, if you're not, kind of having a regular meeting with your financial planner, don't expect that there's a lot of work getting done on the back end. And again, whether that's, hopefully the financial planner proactively reaching out to you and basically trying to say, hey, what are we doing to kind of make sure that we're maximizing wealth? Or at least in worst case scenario, you reaching out to the person that is acting as your financial planner and, basically asking them, hey, when can we sit down to kind of review? That's got to happen. You got to be sitting down and having that regular review. So again, in terms of the bandwidth on your end of things, just knowing who you are as a person and as a person of faith and kind of the impact that you've had in the courtroom. I just think it's a really important thing to take away, is how important it is to have somebody that is going to be accessible and kind of proactively reaching out on that front.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. But that is, as a lawyer who, I've experienced being bogged down.
Right.
And so I've turned down respectfully, politely, turned down some prospective clients in this new endeavor. Kind of 80-20 rule, right? You spend 80% of your time on 20% of your clients. I really want to take clients that I feel like I can help. So I'm really trying to be selective, and that almost includes pretty much every law firm. But, generally speaking, the average Joe Blow who just wants to chat, I'm really more interested in lawyers and helping them from a firm perspective. The other thing that I wanted to get into, if you don't mind, and this is probably a good thing to close out on, is, as you're proactively planning, how do you know where you need to be?
Yes.
So, there's also a purpose to how much you need to save. Because, for example, if you've got $1 million, right, what does that do for you in retirement? So what I always like to do is talk with people, and clearly, future value calculators are a good indication of, if you take these steps, where you will be. But clearly they're not going to be spot on, because the market's not going to give you exactly 10% every year. And, there's ups and there's downs and there's everything in between, but you can get to a situation where, generally speaking, this is where it will take me. Now, so when you get to a point of this is where it will take me, the other question is, how do you deploy it so I can have a lifestyle that is truly like a retirement? A lot of people think $1 million will get you there. And the question is, or the answer is maybe. The general rule of thumb is the 4% rule. And let me just explain that. So if you have a nest egg, let's say in your 401k, you have a nest egg of $1 million, and you say, can I retire on this $1 million? And will this $1 million sustain me moving forward? Well, the question is not how much do you have? We know you have $1 million. The question is, how much do you need to spend each year? So, and I doubt many lawyers are this way, but if you say, I only need to spend about $40,000 a year, then generally speaking, that $1 million is going to get you there. You're financially free, because the data shows that if you are invested properly, now you don't take your $1 million in your 401k and put it in your checking account.
Right.
You have to have something working for you. And so it's either going to be your back, your brains, or it's going to be your investments, right? So as long as it's invested properly, the data is that, because keep in mind, we've already talked about how the S&P 500 on average will earn you about 11.9% annually. So if we keep our money working for us and we pull about 4% every year from that nest egg, then the theory is that will sustain you forever. You start to get in trouble where you start to pull more than 4%. So the real question is, how much do I need to spend in retirement? If you need to spend $40,000 a year, well, the leanest mark we need to get you to is about $1 million. If you need to spend $100,000 a year, which I would assume that's probably what most lawyers' lifestyles would hope to look like, we need to get you around $2.5 million. And, $2.5 million sounds like a ton of money. The thing is, wealth is not created in 6 months. It's not created in 6 years. It's taking the right steps day by day over a 20 and 30-year time horizon, which is why I am truly begging my friends and colleagues to help me. I changed careers for you. Help me, literally. My wife still doesn't know what to think about it, quite frankly. Because from a lawyer's perspective, I had everything that I would want and more. But I see a tremendous need to help my friends and colleagues, and I know that I can put them in a better position if we can just get a plan in place that's specifically tailored to their needs. So if we do the right thing year after year, we're going to get you to the right place. And at that point, you'll have the options of, do I slow down? Do I stop working entirely? And then, it's not like the service is done there. We can continue to talk on, keep the relationship there on, well, how do I deploy this year after year so I know that I'm taken care of financially? So that's, to me, if you walk into a 401k discussion and you just have the idea of, do I want $1 million? Do I want $5 million? Do I want $10 million? I mean, the numbers sound great, but you need to know the why. The why is really to fund your retirement, right? So the question that you need to answer by the time you meet with a financial professional is not really, hey, I want to have $5 million. It's really, I currently spend about 100 grand a year and that suits my lifestyle. So how can we get to a point where my investments can pay me 100 grand a year? Well, now we're talking. Now we can put a plan together.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so powerful. I mean, to kind of, I guess, take a like a philosophical view of what you just said. I can remember sitting down with my financial advisor, and he was asking, what would it look like? How much money in today's dollars would you need to feel like were living the kind of lifestyle that you wanted to live? And mind blown. I was like, I have not I've never thought about that before. And then second question was like, when do you want to hang up your law jacket and not be, if you didn't have to, when would you not want to be practicing? And again, mind blown for a couple of reasons. One, because it was kind of like, well, I really love what I'm doing right now, so I can't ever imagine like being in a place that I want to retire at, which is totally unrealistic. It's just like, it just is not gonna probably be something that just, that's how you feel for the rest of your life. But secondly, again, it was just like, beginning with the end in mind is so important. Like if you want to have the type of retirement that you are hoping for, that doesn't happen just by putting money into account and not thinking about. There's got to be a plan in place. It's not just the like practical measures that do have to happen of, well, how are we going to get to that? But first and foremost, then it's maybe strange to end the podcast with this, but this is, I think, maybe, really at the beginning of the planning stages is, what do I want retirement to look like? And when do I want that to occur? And most of us just don't think about those questions. We don't, we just assume, hey, I'm practicing law now, probably be practicing law in a decade, 2 decades, whatever it looks like. I mean, this is, kind of where I'm going to be for the next long while. So, kind of trying to see that end game is really, I think, difficult for a lot of us, definitely me, to have that vantage point, and a financial advisor really can help plan for that. And the reason I think you're going to just be so tremendous to those of us that are in this criminal practice and in the criminal defense bar is because you've lived that side of things and kind of understand a lot of the pressure points, frustrations. What does, again, 10, 15, 20 years down the road look like? You've been in those shoes, and that's such a huge advantage.
Well, and it's when you take things, I consider part of my job to be a motivator, my current job. And what I mean by that is make things attainable. So you and I sit here and we threw out some huge numbers just now, $1 million, $2.5 million. Earlier in the podcast, we talked about 20,500, 35,000, 60,000 a year, those kinds of things. It's my job to not make those sound grandiose, but to make them obtainable. For example, I gave one of my new clients a checklist, and I know their clientele. Again, I'm a lawyer. I run a business. I know their clientele. I see them in court. And I said, look, if you can spend all the rest of your money, it does not matter. I'm not trying to take money from you. Every 2 months, put one of your DWI hires into your 401k. Just one every 2 months. And here's a checklist, and you just check it as you do it. Put it in pre-tax. You're going to have a great retirement. And, when you break it down, if you put all of your driving while license revokes in your 401k and nothing else, if you put all your speeding tickets in your 401k, and nothing else, keep the rest of your money, spend it, have a good time, get a jet ski, do whatever you need to do. Part of my goal, I think people oversave, right? Yeah. I think people oversave in their checking and savings accounts, and they underinvest. As long as you feel comfortable as the client in, this is my plan, this is what I'm doing, this is where I reasonably believe that this will take me, I think that allows you to have some freedom in terms of I'm following the plan. I'm on the path to success. I'm doing great. And if I take in a huge case and I have an extra $30,000, I don't need to feel bad about getting a jet ski or, taking a really nice European vacation or something like that. You're working hard, do it. And we've put the steps in place where you can both, invest and save for later as well as enjoy, the time now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's having those practical steps is so powerful because again, I think a lot of this can feel overwhelming when you're thinking 30, 40 years down the road and breaking it into bite-sized chunks, over the next 60 days, quarter, year, whatever that looks like. That makes it much more swallowable in terms of figuring out how am I going to get to that kind of long-term goal once I've identified what that retirement looks like and when that will happen. Well, I can't thank you enough, James, for coming on and sharing this. I really feel like this is a conversation that really needs to just be the starting point for a lot of us, because it's just something that we don't think about, talk about, and part of the kind of advancement of the profession to me is to have people leading their best lives. I want all of our colleagues to be leading their best professional lives. And it's really hard to do that when you're, struggling financially, or you have a lot of anxiety about what the future might hold. It's really difficult to do that. And I'm not trying to make this sound like some easy thing to kind of put all of these steps into place or think through this. I mean, it's a lot of, mental energy that can go into the appropriate financial planning. But I really do think that people that have some of these unknowns filled in and have a better sense of what that kind of future that they're trying to work for looks like, I think you're going to notice a difference in terms of your day-to-day life. We've got enough anxieties to worry about in the courtroom, in our businesses, with things that are going on at the office, fires that we're having to put out, that if we can kind of figure out the retirement piece and a long-term financial plan that's working best for us, and we're not in a fire in that spot, that's going to have a massive impact on the rest of our lives. And then at the end of the day, the service that we bring to our clients.
Sure. I mean, again, I think the subject is taboo. It really, we just want to set you up for success. Like I said, I've met with a number of non-attorney folks, but I'm happy to take non-attorneys. But I didn't think that I could meaningfully support their lives. And so, I gave them some very informal advice, but we chose to not have a professional relationship moving forward. I think it's as simple as, just take the first step. Everything about this is taking the first step, right?
For sure.
Give me a call, send me an email. This has nothing to do with aptitude. This has nothing to do with intellectual capacity, and it has everything to do with time. The reason why you're calling me is because I am doing this full time while you're in the courtroom, while you're seeing clients, while you're putting out the daily fires. This is what I'm doing. It's my job. It's my 24/7. So I can't tell you the number of clients that I've already had just in this short time, in this transition, that have looked at me and said, I'm so glad I don't have to worry about this anymore. Like, whether it's a co-pilot relationship or just to know that, someone's looking over your back, that's very important to me. And the other thing that's very important to me is, the CPA is not the only necessary. The CPA is absolutely a necessary tool for your business, but please include the financial advisor as well if you feel that you need that, because we don't want to just, limit your tax bill. We want to supercharge you and your employees' personal net worth as well. It's when you're supercharging that net worth that, the chains come off. I see your background, discipline equals freedom. That's true in investing as well. With disciplined, long-term, step-by-step investing, you feel the chains let loose. And you can do something like I did, which is I'm now following my passion. This is not work for me. This is something I enjoy. And, a lot of people may think, oh, well, I don't want to retire. Great. Just give yourself more options, right? Being financially free is not about stopping work and sitting, sipping margaritas on the beach. If that's your dream, great. But it just allows you to follow your passion, to design your own life, as opposed to being, on that hamster wheel and just being stuck.
Totally. And I think that, again, in terms of encouraging people to reach out to a financial advisor, even if you don't necessarily see that as a part of the puzzle currently, still reach out and talk to somebody. I think that one of the great advantages that I had was very early on in practice, another attorney invited me to sit down with a financial planner. And in all honesty, I had no business sitting down with a financial planner. I didn't have any money to give. There was zero extra budget. Like it was, basically, how am I going to get groceries figured out? But because of the fact that those conversations started earlier, the educational build has really helped, just trying to kind of get a little bit of a better understanding. And thankfully, I was able to talk to somebody that was willing to take the time to sit down and talk with me, probably knowing repeatedly as I would continue to come back that they were not going to be making any money on me. So I know you're that kind of person as well, James, that you'll have that conversation with people. So
yeah, I think a lot of people think, oh, if I'm involving a financial professional, I need to have $50,000 to give to them. And yeah. I worked too hard for this $50,000 to just give it to somebody. And, B, that's a lot of money, right? or I'm never going to get there. And it's not that at all. I mean, we open up accounts, 401ks for clients that start at zero.
Yeah.
And we have clients that say, well, initially, I'm going to try and do $500 a month. And here's what happens. They get in the groove.
Yep.
Right. They do the $500 a month. They do it automatically. They don't even think about it. And I'm there to motivate. I mean, I'm going to look at you the next calendar year and say, was that okay? Can you uptick it a little bit, turn the dial? Because I want you to not just live a retirement, but I want you to live, plentiful retirement. I want you to be able to do what you want, when you want, where you want. So it's not, that's the opposite of what it is. We can totally start from scratch.
Yeah. And plentiful retirement, just to quickly cut in here. I mean, plentiful retirement, I think, starts with the knowledge. And so that just, again, getting some of these concepts and kind of basic understanding of the different tools that are out there by meeting with a financial planner, again, I think can pay massive dividends, maybe 3, 4, 10 years down the road when you actually do have more money to contribute, as opposed to kind of entering that game blind 10 years down the road. Even if you didn't have money to put into any of these tools before then, you can do that with much better understanding of what products and opportunities are out there if you started to have that conversation early. So again, if you haven't contacted somebody on this front, give James a call. I know he will spend the time to kind of talk through whatever your individual circumstances are. Is a great lawyer, now a great financial planner, and a great human being. So I'm so appreciative of all this information that you shared with the audience, James.
No, I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm still looking forward to that beer next time.
That sounds good.
It's happening.
Love it. If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.